Welcome to episode 3 of the Persuasive Mindset, your podcast guide to mastering the art of persuasion by exploring its role across diverse fields through a series of expert interviews. I am your host, Dr. Sorina Matthey de Londra. In this episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Laura Penn, founder of the Leadership Speaking School based in Switzerland. Dr. Penn is a passionate advocate for impactful communication, authenticity, and human connection in the digital age. Today, she shares with us her powerful journey of career reinvention, highlighting how adopting a growth mindset and mastering the art of leadership speaking have enabled her to empower others and help them create positive change in our society. But before we dive into our conversation, here's a glimpse of Dr. Penn's thoughts on the value of career reinvention.
Reinvention is something that should be embraced in today's world, in the 21st century. This is a way of life. And I think that it's important to understand that life happens in waves of contraction to expansion. Things go in and then they come back out again. In the story that I gave you, I went in that year of getting work and feeling completely hopeless and helpless. And then I expanded back out through the plasticity of my mind and connecting dots. Reinvention, you should make a t-shirt. Reinvention is part of having the best life that you can make for yourself.
But what led her to this career transformation? Dr. Penn shares.
Oh, I was slapped in the face by the reality of being a woman taking time off to raise my family and taking a career break. It was a very rude awakening. And I had no idea that was the path I was going to cross. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking, I guess, I've got all these great skills and people will want me and this is terrific. But then I realized that I'm now competing with men who haven't had any career breaks. So all the people who were getting the jobs I wanted were these 32-year-old guys, and maybe that was a coincidence, but I don't think it is, because they were continuous in their trajectory where I took that time off. And I felt, for lack of a better word, punished for it.
Now, let's dive into our conversation with Dr. Laura Penn. Enjoy! I'd like to start our conversation by asking, what inspired and led you to create the Leadership Speaking School?
I like to call this my founder's story. This happened from a confluence of events that were happening in my life in 2010. Basically, I'd had a lifetime of globetrotting, from my childhood of globetrotting, from my career of globetrotting, from working with my family and globetrotting with them. We arrived in Switzerland in 2009. At that point, I was in my late 30s. I was raising 2 small children. I had taken 3 years off after finishing my doctorate. And I was ready to land and expand. I really was ready to get back to work in my field, which is conservation science. And I couldn't find work. Horrible, horrible, horrible first year of looking for opportunities, scratching, grinding for opportunities, but no doors were opened, no windows were cracked where I could get in and slip in, no basement doors were unlocked for me to enter through. So it was a lockdown. But I did have an opportunity from, let's call it, to keep this metaphor going, a basement window that I found, an opening to write a book for a conservation organization. And this opening brought me into a place where there are a lot of conservation professionals walking around. And there I started attending what was called a brown bag lecture, where scientists would come back from their field missions and they would talk while people ate lunch. And one after another, I noticed every single time that the people who were speaking, my colleagues, were failing at delivering their presentations. They were failing in every way you can fail when you speak in front of audiences. They were ticking the boxes of what not to do. mumbling, too many slides, looking away, not being accessible, bodies were closed like pretzels. And I thought to myself, this is a problem. This is a problem because these messages of conservation are critical. Because conservation science, as we all know, is a crisis discipline. The wildlife and the wild places that are depending on these scientists to communicate effectively are at risk. So that was my aha moment. I thought, let me just stop the bus right now. I have tools from my background. I have a lifetime of performing arts. There are tools there. I have years and years of teaching. I have tools there. And I have my background in conservation biology. There are tools there. So I founded a club called Communicating Environment with this large conservation organization. And I field tested this idea of, can I help my colleagues to promote conservation through effective public speaking? And that became the foundation for what is today the Leadership Speaking School, where now I train global leaders and teams and change makers how to speak with impact, authenticity, and human connection. But all that got started back down in 2009, 2010 from those brown bag lectures. That was the beginning of this movement that I have started.
Speaking of tools that one gains in one profession that can thereafter be applied to another profession, I'd like to take a moment to ask you two questions. First, what are your views on career reinvention? And second, looking back, what are some of the transferable skills you noticed as helpful to have acquired during your prior career in the field of conservation biology, which you can now apply to your current career?
Okay. I go to the church of career reinvention. you know, this was my swan song. I'm a child of the 1970s. I was born in the early 70s. And I was raised at a time where people kind of had one job and you went to school and you did that, and everything was kind of very linear. And when I was coming up at university in the 90s, it was still this sort of linear track: conservation, ecology, conservation biology, organic chemistry, all the things that I had to do. So I had this kind of linear part of my upbringing. But because of my education, I went to a liberal arts college in the United States called Vassar College, where I learned not only how to be a biologist, but I had a tremendous opportunity to have a liberal arts education. So I was in a dance company for 3 years. I, studied African American women's literature, and I was a hardcore scientist. This is what a liberal arts education does. So this is where I learned about reinvention. This is where I learned that you could do more than one thing at a time, and that's okay. And I'm a student of reinvention. It's because I feel of my liberal arts background that made me such a fluid thinker that I was able to connect the different dots of my life to reinvent myself in the description that I gave in the beginning of our interview. It was that kind of motion of molecules that enabled me to think differently and to dare to be remarkable. So, absolutely, reinvention is something that should be embraced in today's world, in the 21st century. This is a way of life. And I think that it's important to understand that life happens in waves of contraction to expansion. Things go in and then they come back out again. In the story that I gave you, I went in that year of not getting work and feeling completely hopeless and helpless. And then I expanded back out through the plasticity of my mind and connecting dots. Reinvention, you should make a t-shirt. Reinvention is part of having the best life that you can make for yourself.
Speaking of the need to reinvent oneself professionally, I'd like to ask you a question based on something I have noticed by living in Switzerland, which is after having several discussions with different professional women, and from my own experience, I've observed that it is rather difficult for women who live in this country to obtain a job once they choose to make a pause and take a few years off their professional career in order to, for example, raise a family or help their own family adapt to a new country or for any other reasons. And I'm very curious to know what are your actual views on this topic?
Oh, I was slapped in the face by the reality of being a woman taking time off to raise my family and taking a career break. It was a very rude awakening. And I had no idea that that was the path I was going to cross. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking, I guess, oh, I've got all these great skills and people will want me and this is terrific. But then I realized that I'm now competing with men who haven't had any career breaks. So all the people who were getting the jobs I wanted were these 32-year-old guys, you know, and maybe that was a coincidence, but I don't think it is. Because they were continuous in their trajectory where I took that time off. And I felt, for lack of a better word, punished for it. And I somehow felt like I had to, go back to now zero, even after having proved myself, after the slogging of my career and the slogging of getting that PhD, which all of us know is a grinding job. I had to go back to zero and I had to be very humble about it. Writing that book that year and making hardly no money doing it, where I wanted to be working in a high-end conservation job, that was a blow to my ego. Um, but talking to other women in similar situations here in Switzerland, I started to get the lay of the land, and my story was not unique. This seems to be a thing, which is a real shame because women wanting to go back to work are probably the best people you can hire, especially women who are raising small children, because their time management and their uh, drive to get things done is extremely high. And they'd be very productive and happy employees if people were awake enough to hire women in that state.
I'd like to now shift to your current profession in order to clarify for our listeners 2 points, which are first, who are your main customers? And second, what are the different types of paid trainings that you provide?
I like to call the people that I work with my students, not my customers, because I'm a teacher. And the people that I teach are leaders and teams and change makers, as I call them, from the world's most well known companies, organizations, and academic institutions. And what I do is I teach my students how to communicate with impact, authenticity, and human connection in the digital age. And I do this in three different ways. I have a very intensive program for individuals. So this is individual leaders. I call it Leadership Speaking Core. It is my transformational teaching program where selected people, and I only work with 6 people at a time. It's a very small cohort. Selected people that have to apply and are interviewed by me and are chosen by me to be in the program. They work for 3 days and they transform as communicators from head to toe in that period of time. It's a miracle what happens in that training. And then I do training for teams virtually and live in my master classes. And these are very dynamic, very participatory, very experiential. I teach with the body. What the body is learning, the brain is learning. So it's extremely embodied learning. It's very team building. It's very active. And there I teach the toolbox, the leadership speaking toolbox, which is this arsenal of powerful tools related to presence, voice, body, and audience connection that are applicable for all forms of communication. And then finally, I do keynote speaking, which is where I travel to different conferences and events all over the world. And I'm a keynote speaker speaking for anything from 15 minutes to 45 minutes in front of hundreds of leaders and teams about the theme of business communication.
While conducting research to prepare for our conversation, I read online that you also advise the University of Geneva faculty members on how to adapt their lectures to the university's online teaching platform. Could you please elaborate on that?
Sure. Oh, this is one of my favorite things to do. I have my fingers in many pots. And I once had a student say, yeah, wow, Dr. Penn, there isn't one week that is exactly the same as another week for you, is there? I say, no, because every week is different. That particular training was really fun. I worked with three professors of computer programming to elevate their MOOC performances. So, MOOCs, as we all know in academics, are massive open online courses, and they needed my help big time. So, I took them from zero to heroes in how they were communicating on camera. We worked with presence, we worked with voice, we worked with body, we worked with the camera connection. And then I went into the digital studio with them a couple of weeks later when they were actually going to deliver their MOOC and film it. And we were at the RTS, the Radio Television Suisse headquarters to film this. And there I warmed them up. I reminded them of the tools that they had learned, and they went really smoothly through their performances. And it changed everything about how they were able to engage with that camera, aka the audience. So the students who are going to be learning from those MOOCs are going to be benefiting from the work that was done. So yeah, this is an example of the kind of work that I do in addition to the three things that I mentioned of leadership speaking core, master classes, and keynote speaking. I also do a lot of work with startups and work with pitching. One of my favorite clients is Louis Vuitton Maison House. I work with 9 designers a year. So there's a design prize, the Louis Vuitton prize, and 9 people are chosen as finalists. And I work with these finalists to help them elevate their pitches and help them elevate as designers so that they can show up as the best versions of themselves in front of their collections, in front of the world.
In order to help as many people as possible to improve their communication skills, which you call leadership speaking skills, you also provide a variety of free content online, and some examples include a podcast show, 2 books, and 4 TEDx talks, which I'd like to invite the listeners to look up online. And I'd also like to ask you the following. What are some other examples of work or education ideas that any professional might like to consider undertaking so that they can improve their leadership speaking skills?
Well, the first thing is you have to be awake to the fact that you need this training in the first place. And, this is one of the first criteria that I ask for when I interview people for leadership speaking core or when I'm asked to work one-to-one with executives. Do they want to do this work? Because if the answer is no, then forget about it. You're not gonna go all in. It's like trying to do your doctorate halfway. You're not gonna succeed. So you have a mindset of, I need this training. Let me open, and then you become coachable. Then you can do the work. So that's kind of the first step. But then more practically, there are lots of things around that can support you in your journey. And I'll just give you 2 examples. There's kind of the long journey version, and then there's the kind of shorter, curtailed version. The longer version is you're doing all of these things yourself, and you are discovering opportunities like joining Toastmasters. Toastmasters International is one of the world's most effective, I'd say, public speaking clubs. There are hundreds of thousands of Toastmasters all over the world, and there are many, many thousands of clubs all over the world. I know here in Switzerland, there are loads. There are 5 clubs in Geneva, there are 5 clubs in Lausanne. I opened a club in Nyon. They're everywhere. You can just Google toastmasters.org to find your nearest club. And this is a place where you should go twice a month and participate in public speaking with peers who are there for the same reason. As a member, you work on different speaking projects, different speeches are given, and you're constantly elevating and growing your skills. You're being evaluated by fellow Toastmasters that are telling you what you need to be working on. So it's a beautiful relationship of growing through evaluation and growing by trial and error. So Toastmasters is definitely a resource for anyone who is hungry and open and ready to do this work. And then another thing that I always say is one of the most powerful things you can do to go on to stay on this journey of speaking more is to say yes. Say yes to every speaking opportunity that comes your way. And this I call stage time. This is your opportunity to be up in front of audiences, working in the craft, doing and learning by doing. So that is definitely one of the feathers in your cap of how to continue to do this work. So that's the version of that, that takes longer, so to speak. And then the shorter version of that is to do, the version that I just described, but to get support from a professional teacher. One of the best things that I've done in my career happened in 2019 when I got professional help from a business coach to elevate the rest of my company. And she saved me 5 years of trying to do it myself. So in one day of deep training with her, she accelerated and turbo boosted my learning. If that's something that you're interested in, then you find a teacher that you respect. Success leaves evidence. And successful speakers, aka people who can be your teachers, leave breadcrumbs. You follow those crumbs to the person that you admire and you learn from them, and that accelerates you to a completely different level.
Do you believe it is possible for one to become a successful public speaking or, as you coin it, leadership speaking coach without finding a mentor or hiring professional help?
So you can't become an expert on your own. That is one of the most important things to tell those people who want to be doing this. This is not a DIY situation where you watch 100,000 YouTube videos where you try to teach yourself this skill, or you read all the books, or you watch the TED Talk. No, you need to be trained by others in different elements. There are different modalities related to this field. There's the modality of teaching. You have to be good at it. You have to be able to create great lesson plans that engage and activate your students. You have to be good at facilitation, which is similar but also different to teaching. What is the temperature of the room? How is your audience responding? How are you going to engage a bored audience? How are you going to move the training forward? You have to naturally be extremely good at speaking. So you need to be doing really elevated, advanced things related to speaking. You need to be doing the contests in Toastmasters, not only being a member there, but doing the contests, which is a big part of the culture of Toastmasters. And this is one of the ways that I got an elevator ride up into more advanced levels. And I became a European champion of evaluation speeches in 2013, for example. But that kind of training, that kind of hard graft is what you need. And you need other teachers. I have the fortune of being trained by the most extraordinary women that I know. Patsy Rodenberg, one of the world's most extraordinary teachers in voice and presence, is my teacher. Kristen Linklater was my teacher. She wrote the book on freeing the natural voice. Gisela Rocha is my teacher in movement for life and the body in communication. So you need to be seeking teachers who you respect and admire, in addition to this other side of, doing it yourself, to be able to elevate and grow as a leader in the field of leadership speaking.
Taking a moment to reflect on your overall career trajectory, I'm curious to know, is there a professional activity or choice that you made in the past which you now believe helped shape your career for the better?
It's hard to isolate one. I turn 51 next week. So, I'm doing a lot of scanning, thinking about, oh, what was that one thing? It's a lot of years to put together. But I can say that there are a couple of key ingredients that helped to create this version of me. One of them was I always looked for stage time, from being school age to graduating from school, I was always on stage. So that's dancing, that's theater, that's anything where you can be in front of people. That was certainly the most important ingredient. Then I remember I took a job where I had stage time at my school. Besides being in the dance company, I was a tour guide for 3 years, touring students, future students, and their families around all over the campus. That's stage time. I was a teacher at zoos, teaching conservation science and the wonder of the natural world. I did that for 5 years. That put me in front of thousands of humans and loads of teaching time. It's Malcolm Gladwell who gave us the idea of 20,000 hours plus, right? That's where I did my 20,000 hours in all those zoos, Bronx Zoo, London Zoo, and the Central Park Zoo teaching. And then I wrote 2 books to become an expert. I had to get real grounding in this information and this content. So yeah, there are lots of kind of stages where I was assisted in doing this, but all of those dots connected in the end to be this person that I am today.
As we wrap up our conversation, would you like to share any suggestions with junior level professionals interested in following a similar line of work to yours? Additionally, based on your experience, what advice or insights would you offer to recent doctoral graduates looking to channel their skills and qualities into a new career path?
With pleasure, with pleasure. It takes that awakening that I talked about, being awake to this fire inside your belly that you want more of this. Then it takes the skills that you have as a doctoral student and as a candidate for a doctorate, that you have to have grit, resilience, courage, massive curiosity, right? All of those doctorate skills are transferable in this quest too. And the last thing I say to you all is to dare to be remarkable. Dare to design the life that you want for yourself, where you connect your own dots of strengths, of passions, of interests, of talents and genius. Dare to create that life so that you can live your best life.
And on that positive note, thank you very much for taking the time to share your wisdom with us today.
It's been a privilege to be here. And to find out more about what I do, I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can go to Laura Penn, PhD. On Instagram is another platform. There you find me under the craft of leadership speaking. And of course, to visit the website, www.theleadershipspeakingschool.com.
And that concludes our conversation with Dr. Laura Penn. If you enjoyed this discussion, please be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with others who might benefit from it. Until next time, be well.